Well, what's up guys, and welcome back to Project Time Garage. This is my 87 Toyota pickup. This is the video series about this Toyota pickup. For those of you who watch my channel, I bet you thought I'd forgotten all about this one ever since I got the Datsun pickup. But I haven't. In fact, we're doing a lot of lighting upgrades, and it just so happens that I had a lighting company on Amazon reach out to me and ask if I would try their lights out in this truck, and I said sure, because you know me, I like my lights. Anyway, this thing has a set of really awesome Wagner sealed beam lights in here, which are probably all well, good, and fine, but it seems all well, good, and fine anyway, until you see what we're going to replace it with. Come look. See, in here are a set of projector housing replacement lights. I know, right? And these bad boys are LED, and they should be a lot brighter than what is in this truck. Now, if I like these lights, and if they really do help out, I'm going to buy another set of them with my own money, and we're going to put them in this. The 87 Shelby GLHS. See, it has the very same sealed beam lights in it. And since I am just a guy that really likes to be able to see at night, if these work out, I'm going to put them in there. So you'll know what I know in a few minutes. Before we get started too much, I'm going to take you for a ride in this little truck, and we're going to go into the woods and we'll see how these perform, and then I'll probably take one of these lights out and replace it with one of these lights, and we may take another trip up through the woods with one of each before I finally put the other one in and hope that we have way better lighting, because we need it. Link for these lights down there in the comments. It'll be an Amazon link where you can buy a set of these for yourself. Now, I know I say this all the time on every single video, and I know you guys are probably sick of hearing it, but I feel like I need to say it. If you haven't already subscribed, I'd really appreciate if you would. It really helps the channel out, and it helps me to be able to put out free content like this. There's a little icon right down there. Just click on that, hit subscribe. If you're so inclined, you can hit the little bell notification down there too, and that'll let you know every time I upload a new video, which is once a week, or at least it has been so far. So make sure you do that. Guess since this project's not going to do itself, we probably better get started. On with the show. Well, I was going to take you guys on a nice night ride with both old lights, but I found out that the light on the driver's side is completely and totally shot. So may as well go ahead and put a new one in that side, and then we'll go drive it with a new one on the driver's side and an old one on the passenger side. Let's see what that does. We're going to start this project by opening the hood, because that's what you do with every good project. Open the hood first. Look at all that raw power just clawing to get out of there. Actually, I think that's just oil smoke. My mistake. Now, in order to do this project and do it properly, you're going to need a Phillips head screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, a flashlight. Well, you probably only need the flashlight if you're old and you can't really see that well in dark places. That'd be me. I'll show you how you pull these out. Toyota has little squeezy clips right here. You separate them. I usually put a screwdriver between them and pull, and they just pop out like so. So you're going to have one of those here, here, here. That's a screw. Here, here, and you'll have the same across the bottom. Let me get those out. Now, it doesn't help a bit that this grill or this bumper has been bent up, and it really gets in my way, but a longer screwdriver will fix that. about that long. Ta-da! Now, as far as getting the old lights out, they have Phillips head screws that hold this retainer ring down. I'm going to leave that. Actually, this one only has 2. There's supposed to be 4. But in that case, I'll just pull out the remaining one, and that'll give me just enough room to reach in here and unplug our steel beam light. Like that. As for our new light, I'm going to orient it so that the words and letters and writing and hieroglyphics are all oriented properly. And send all this stuff through the back, and that lines up pretty doggone good. So since this thing only has 2 screws, I think I'm going to opt for the crisscross screw installation method, so that I have one down here and one up here. Sturdy enough. Now, let me show you what you're going to run into with Toyota lights and decide where you want to go with it. You can't just take a regular LED headlight and slam it in the truck and make it work, because Toyota only has one power source for the headlight and it alternates ground. Let me show you what I mean. Let's just say this is your standard headlight, okay? Most of your standard headlights have 3 connections on them. There's a ground connection, there's a low beam plus 12 connection, and there's a high beam plus 12 connection, okay? So we'll call this high, we'll call this ground, we'll call this low. So if you take your battery, let's say this is your battery right here. Let's say you have a plus terminal on most batteries, plus 12 volts. Then you have a negative terminal on most batteries, all right? If you simply take the plus and run it up here to the plus, and you take the negative and you run it over here to the negative, the light will light up the low beam side, okay? If you take another 12 volt wire and you run it over here to that side at the same time, you will have both the low beam and high beam filaments lit up, all right? That's standard conventional sealed headlight technology, right? Toyota didn't wire them this way. Let me show you. Here's what Toyota did. Toyota ran, let's say this is the headlight switch, right? Toyota ran 12 volts right up to the headlight switch, okay? So when I turn the headlight switch on, I get voltage right to this terminal all the time, plus 12. So plus 12 volts jumps on that terminal, right? But what I'm missing is I don't have grounds. Toyota took a good ground, like so, ran it over to the switch, and when you turn it on low beam, for example, let's say this is the low beam, run a wire down to there. When you turn it onto low beam, it connects this ground with this terminal, okay? Same thing on high beam. They have a high beam terminal. And when you flip it on high beam, it sends ground to this terminal. So what they're doing is, as long as the headlight switch is on, they're letting 12 volts sit at that top terminal that most people would use for a ground. And when you turn on low beam, it gives ground there, and high beam, it gives ground there. That's all well, good, and fine. And they're doing that, I'm sure, to keep from having to run so many hot wires throughout the front of the truck. It's a little safer to switch ground than it is 12 volts. But here's the problem. LEDs won't do this, right? LEDs expect ground on ground, 12 volts on 12 volts, and 12 volts on 12 volts. They don't work backward. So if you have a Toyota truck and you're planning on retrofitting back into LED headlights, just know that this is going to be a problem, right? It's pretty easy to get either low beam or just high beam, or it's easy to get both low and high all together. But being able to switch back and forth between them is going to require relays. Here's another representation of this. Here I have plus 12 volts going to my battery pack, another plus 12 volts going to the same part of my battery pack, and I have a ground going to my battery pack. On these old seal beam lights, if I hook this up to ground, if I go to this side, I get light. If I go to the other side, I get more light. Low beams, high beams, low beams, high beams, right? But what Toyota did, just kind of illustrating this for you a little bit. Toyota took 12 volts and popped it right there on that terminal, just like so. And the way they work it is 12 volts on that terminal, ground on this terminal, high beam, low beam. That's a terrible connection there. There. So that's how they work it. Totally backwards. I mean, not backwards in practice, just backwards in the way that it's wired up. If you flash forward to LED lights, LEDs want a ground here, and they want 12 volts either on this one or this one. But if I reverse it the way Toyota has it, and I put 12 volts on this one, now when I hook this up, I get nothing. Same with that one, hence the problem. Okay, like I said, you can overcome all this with relays. So I went ahead and temporarily wired up my passenger side headlight with a relay, mainly just for proof of concept and just to kind of show how it works before everything gets tucked back in there. Here's my diagram. This is how you do it. Okay, here's my headlight plug, all right? We established earlier that I have 3 prongs coming up from the truck. I have a 12 volt all the time when you turn the switch on. I have varying grounds. There's really 2 grounds here. I have a high beam ground and a low beam ground depending on what you do in the cab. So what I've done is I've taken that 12 volts and I've just ran it straight up to the positive control coil side of a relay, which would be terminal 86, right? From that 86, I went ahead and branched it off into 87 as well. And the reason I did that is because this is the power coming from the truck that's meant to run the headlight anyway. So basically, I'm going to send it into the relay there in order to later go out to actually run the headlight the way it was intended to begin with. So basically, I'm just grabbing a little of that power to control this coil, right? Also, I've tapped into it again, and I've ran it all the way over to the low beam side of my headlight. So at this point, when I turn on the headlights, plus 12 volts, I get plus 12 volts here from the truck to 86 to 87 and all the way over to my low beam wire on my LED bulb, right? All I got to do now is take the ground wire of the LED bulb and just ground it to a good chassis ground, all right? And at that point, my low beam works without any of this relay mess, because basically I just have a wire from plus 12 all the way over to the low beam side and then my ground, and that's it. The tricky part in all this right here is to basically make the high beam circuit work, all right? So basically what needs to happen here is I need to turn this negative into a positive at the light, because the light wants 12 volts, right, on this high beam. So what we can do is we can take this ground that the truck supplies on high beam and run it over to pin 85 on the relay. And that basically completes this coil circuit. So when I switch the truck to high beams, this gets a ground circuit, energizes this coil here, and pulls this magnetic sweeper down. It makes that connection right there, and this 12 volts that I'm putting in here anyway flows right out into the high beam side of the light. And that's really it. It works, and it works well. If I were going to do this, I would do this for each side. I would put a relay on each side of the truck. It keeps you from having to build an entire new harness for the thing, and it'll work just fine. In fact, This solution right here is going to draw way less amperage than the factory headlights did. Those seal beam halogen lights draw some serious amperage on high beam, but these LEDs draw almost nothing. So the factory wiring here is more than adequate, and at the end of the day, I've actually, this is a net gain as far as amperage overhead, right? So let's go look at the truck. Let me show you what I've got. Let me just spin you around here. So there are my parking lights, there are my low beam lights, and there are my high beam lights. And they work just fine, okay? Let me show you the madness that I've got going on here as my temporary measure. You probably won't be able to make heads or tails of most of this, but you see this right here is the original harness coming from the truck. And basically, the blue wire there, that's a ground going up to the ground control side of the relay. And this this pin over here, this is the 12 volts that the truck supplies all the time when you turn the headlight switch on. And you see I just tapped my white wire and just ran it down there that goes out to my LED light. And then I'm just basically tapping into that and running that over to those two poles on the relay like we talked about. And the output of the relay is this yellow wire here. Rolls over and you see my expert installation job there. But the relay that I'm using is just a cheap Omron relay. I mean, just a cheap relay. You can see the part number there if you care about it, 7866. I just have a bunch of these laying around. It doesn't require a whole lot. And there is there's the pin out for it if you want to see that too. All right, with that one wired in, let's go ahead, jump in the truck, take a ride through the woods, and see how the new light on the left compares to the old light on the right. Let's take a drive. Okay, we are deep in the woods of Tennessee. We are riding along. You can see out there what I'm seeing. And if you look over on the right side, you'll see the brown. Well, that's the factory headlight. And pretty much all the rest of that stuff out there, that's the new one. That's low beam, that's high beam. Can you say improvement? I can say improvement. That's awesome. That's with one of the new projector lights and one factory headlight. It's like not even the same conversation. Well, that's a big difference. Let's go ahead and get the other light installed, get all this wiring put together, and we'll take one more ride with both headlights in and see what we have there. That's going to be a big difference. So I put just a single relay over here in this corner and basically just ran a wire all the way over here. Why did I use a single relay when I said earlier, well, let's use two relays? It's because I measured the amperage draw on those lights and totally lit up. The thing draws 3.67 amps. It's a 10 amp relay. So the wire that I ran from the other side was way bigger than the factory wire anyway. So tiny amperage draw, plenty big enough wire. That relay will serve in that capacity forever. I have no issues at all with that. Total of a less than an 8 amp draw on a 10 amp relay. So I'm completely and totally comfortable with that. That's why I did that. Anyway, that's buttoned back up. Everything's put back together. It looks a lot better. Love the look of the truck. Helped out quite a bit, I think, as far as that goes. There's low beams, there's high beams, and there's wink at you mode. When you think about wink at you mode, you don't really have that. My little light dimmer switch thing is all janky. You can touch it, it does weird stuff. Anyway, that works. All right, guys, we're sitting here in the woods. It's dark. Let's go for a quick ride. Here we go. Low beams, high beams, wink at you mode. Yeah, I would say that made a crazy, crazy difference. Look at that. So there's more out in the open. There's low beams, there's high beams. Definitely throws the light out there. I mean, you can see good. So guys, as usual, really appreciate you watching. Hey, listen, if you don't forget to like and share and subscribe, and do tell all your friends about the channel. Encourage them to come check us out. Appreciate you watching, and guys, I'll see you next time.